some of the people who discover the most exciting things, they're just totally driven to explore new things, and they were never happy, right? They were never satisfied. There was never the sense that, hey, I wanted to do this and I did it and this feels so good. It's like, hey, I wanted to do this, now what can I do next? Well, that was good, so let me do something even crazier.
Yeah.
Okay, I did that, so now let's do it on one ski, backwards, and it's like, oh, now I'm dead.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. It's great to have you here. Today, we're going to talk all about exercise and pushing the limits of human performance and achievement. We're going to talk about exploration and adventure. And in order to do that, I brought in the incredible Alex Hutchinson. Let me introduce you to Alex. He is a National Magazine award-winning science journalist, New York Times bestselling author, and a former national team runner who has spent his career exploring the outer limits of human performance. Alex is best known for his long-running sweat science column for Outside Magazine, where he breaks down the latest research on endurance, training, and outdoor sports, and for his regular columns in the Globe and Mail and Canadian Running. His work has also appeared in the New York Times, the New Yorker, and Popular Mechanics. He's the author of several books, including the New York Times bestseller Endure, Mind, Body, and the Curiously Elastic Limits of Human Performance, which has really become the go-to text for athletes, coaches, and scientists trying to understand why some people can push right to the edge and then somehow keep going. His newest book, The Explorer's Gene, Why We Seek Big Challenges, New Flavors, and Blank Spots on the Map, dives into the science of curiosity and exploration, while earlier books like Which Comes First, Cardio or Weights, tackle the science of fitness. Before becoming a full-time journalist, Alex started out as a physicist, completing a PhD at the University of Cambridge and doing a postdoctoral research fellowship in the U.S. National Security Agency's quantum computing group. Sounds confusing. All while competing as a middle and long-distance runner for the national team on the track, in cross-country on the roads, and even in mountain running. Today he lives and still runs on most days in Toronto, where he continues to translate cutting-edge science into practical insights for anyone who cares about pushing their limits a little bit further, which is, of course, why you are here on this video and podcast. So please enjoy my conversation all about pushing the limits of human performance with the incredible Alex Hutchinson. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you here live in studio, not just like remote audio. We're actually like live and in person.
Yeah, this is great. We've talked virtually many times,
Yeah.
But it's nice to be here in the flesh.
So I'm really curious about obviously all of the things, and all of your writing is fantastic, and I love how you explore the limits of human performance. I want to begin with the mind-body connection, and partially because I'm getting a little bit older, my body's talking back to my mind a little bit more than it used to. My mind is writing checks my body can't always cash, which is super curious. So I'm just wondering about your latest thinking around mind-body connection as it relates to our ability to perform to our potential.
Yeah, I mean, this is really, I think, the question that got me into sports science, is that I come from the background as a runner, and I was always wondering, like, at what point is it, am I limited by my body or am I limited by my brain? And where's the boundary, and can we move the boundary? And I think there was a real revolution, let's say, 15 years ago-ish, is when scientists really started to take this idea seriously, that you can't just put someone on a treadmill, measure their oxygen consumption or their muscle twitches or whatever, and understand what the limits of their performance are.
Right.
I would say now, that was a sort of paradigm shift, and now things are kind of leveling out, where we're still struggling. Okay, now everyone recognizes that there is a mind-body connection, and that it matters, and that it actually is it is the final decision maker as to whether you can push harder or have to back off. How does it work? Like, what's going on in the brain? What are the connections? And I don't think we have answers to those, like final answers to those questions yet, because it is hard to look in the brain.
Yeah, of course. What do you think some of the possibilities are? And maybe we can think of it in terms of like a feed-forward drive to move or to exercise or push ourselves. And then, of course, there's the feedback from the body up to the brain. Maybe there's something that's governing that. Like, where do you think we're at on that?
Yeah. So my general philosophical approach to these deep questions is that it's probably all of the above.
Yeah.
So in the endurance science, world, there was a big debate between does your brain does it dial back its limits based on feed forward? Like it's sending signals to the body, and when it detects that it's sending like really hard signals, it knows that you're tired, and so it dials back. Or is it a feedback mechanism where there is, distress signals like lactate levels are high or whatever the case may be, and it's going back to your brain and telling you to dial it back? I don't know the answer for sure, obviously, but if I have to place my money, it's like all of those things are like there's 10 scientists with 10 theories. I'm like, you're right. It doesn't have to be just your theory. We can have different limits that are pulling us back in different contexts. So there can be times when mental fatigue is the key thing. Like the reason you can't lift the weight is because you were up late last night with a sick child or whatever. Yeah. And it's mental fatigue that's getting. But there can be situations where the reason you can't lift the weight is that your muscles have gone into some metabolic state because you've pushed them so hard they're tearing, and so it's really a local physical limitation that's hitting. So in reality, I think I guess if I was trying to give a useful takeaway, let's say, it would be that all of this stuff gets integrated into your subjective perception of how hard something is. And so when I say, I don't think I can maintain this pace for the last 2K of my run, that's not just all in my head, but it's not just all in my muscles either. My head is integrating how I'm feeling, what I was doing last night, what the temperature is, all these things together. And so the greater that we can dial into how we feel, I think that's the best way of getting the best of both worlds, of understanding what our bodies and what our minds are capable of at any given moment.
It's super interesting. I think it's really helpful for people because if you're listening to this podcast, watching this podcast, people are interested in exercise or interested in health, wellness. And when you exercise, you're either exercising for a longer period of time, or maybe you're at a spin class, you're pushing really, really hard, or you're lifting some weights, you're noticing that your muscles are getting fatigued, and it's hard to get to those last few reps. So perhaps you and I could tease out what some of those different factors are that are associated with the limits of what we're capable of. Maybe there's a few in the body and one or two in the brain. Let's explore some of those. So let's say you're out for a run, you're on a pace, and it's like, I don't know, I'm not sure how this is going to go.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple. So there's some classic ones, the 20th century body limits that are real. And so if you've been out on this run for 2 hours, let's say, there's a good possibility that you're running out of fuel. Like your muscles are getting depleted from the energy sources that they store.
Right.
And so if you were to take a swig of sports drink, you might find that you feel better. Even before you take a drink and immediately you feel better, and it's like that stuff's still in your stomach. It hasn't made it to your muscles, but your brain is like, okay, we got some fuel on the way, so we can pull back the brakes a little bit. So fueling is one thing and definitely if you're busy and I said if you're out for 2 hours, but let's say you've been at the office all day and you forgot to eat lunch because you were busy or whatever. Yeah. You may be depleted from the moment you start that run, and so fueling is one thing. Temperature is another straightforward one. If it's summer and if it's 35 degrees, if you're overheating, it's not that your muscles are boiling yet, but your brain is very highly attuned to core temperatures.
Right.
So that's one end of the spectrum is these physical limits that your brain is monitoring the dashboard for things like temperature and fuel in the same way that your car's dashboard is monitoring that. The harder ones are like the mental side, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know what, like the studies on mental fatigue are like, we're gonna sit you in front of a computer, you're gonna play a game where it's like arrows flashing on a screen and you're gonna tap left or right, and it's not hard, but it requires sustained focus. Mm-hmm. And I've tried these protocols. So I tried a mental training program for like 12 weeks leading up to a marathon. And the goal was to move up to like 90 minutes of sitting at the computer going tap, 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 tap. And it's like 5 minutes, you're like, man, I can't sustain this focus. It's really mentally challenging. And so then you start to think of like, well, when I'm on deadline, I'm writing an article and I'm going to sit there for more than 90 minutes really trying to dial it up. And you realize that's a limitation. And neurochemically, what's happening? I mean, there's probably a lot of different things. Adenosine is a neurotransmitter that's associated with mental fatigue.
Right.
That's what caffeine tries to interfere with. So that's why caffeine can help out. But so there's that. Those are maybe the two ends of the spectrum of like the simple mechanical things. Your muscles are too hot versus your perception of how much mental energy you've already spent and whether you're able to harness your body's limits.
Interesting. And there's also, I read a little while ago about neurotransmitter depletion and maybe being a potential thing as well, which is kind of more advanced than we need to get into. It's just like,
but that's exactly what's going to be happening when I'm sitting at the screen for 90 minutes.
Right.
Is, I'm deploying neurotransmitters of various types, whether it's dopamine or serotonin and all these things, or adenosine can function as a neurotransmitter. And if I keep doing the same thing over and over again, eventually the mechanisms that you're going to get buildup of some or depletion of others, and that's going to affect your subjective perception of whether you can keep doing this.
You remind me of a study we did a number of years ago, pre-COVID, in my lab. We had soccer referees come in, and we exercised them on a treadmill to exhaustion, because that's what you do. It's fun to make other people go to exhaustion. And they had to do that test that you were describing on the computer as they were going intermittently throughout the course of starting the run all the way through till they were completely depleted. And I think they were out there for like 40 minutes on the treadmill. And our hypothesis was that as they would become more fatigued, they would start to make errors in their decision making. And it was actually the opposite, which was really curious. And what we think might have happened is that when they were going easy, they were distracted. And then as it got harder and harder, they got more and more focused. They started to block out those distractions. They weren't looking around the room. They weren't thinking about anything else. They're
in fight or flight mode, right?
Yeah, so that was really, really curious. So anyway, I thought that just popped into my brain as you were describing that.
And there's some analogous research coming from the other end. So let's say with these mental fatigue studies that I described, you do this mental fatigue task, then you get on the treadmill and your endurance is hurt. Well, they also do these studies with soccer players. And so they want to find out, how does this affect not just your endurance at a given pace, but how does it affect different types of running? How does it affect your decision making, your tactical? They put them in virtual reality, and the ball comes and you have a split second to decide, am I going to pass, am I going to shoot, did you make the right choice? And so with the physical side, what they find is endurance is compromised so that for the easy or slow or medium running, they're going to go slower. But in this simulated soccer game, when they have to sprint, they can sprint just as fast. So this is comparable to what you're saying.
Right.
So you're mentally fatigued in a soccer game. If the ball's right there and it's an open net, you can still max out. But it's all the other times when you're jogging, you're out of position, I need to get up the field, or play is moving, I need to reposition. You're jogging a little more slowly. So you're just a little bit less likely to be in the right position, to anticipate what other people do. And then when you have to make a decision, your reaction time is a little bit slower and you make more wrong decisions.
Yeah.
And these are things you can't detect in yourself, right?
Yeah.
You can't tell that, I reacted in 250 milliseconds instead of 200 milliseconds. And if you make a wrong decision 5% more of the time, you're not really aware that that's happening. But this is what mental fatigue is doing. When you're mentally tired, it's compromising in these ways that are very hard to detect.
All right, let's just take a little bit of a break. Let's breathe for a moment so that we can integrate all of this incredible science. And at this point, I'd love for you to share the episode with someone that you know. When you share this information, we all improve. We build a community together where we make the world a better place. So take a moment, pause, breathe, think through what we're learning, and share this with someone who could really benefit from learning this information. I experience mental fatigue often in partnership with physical fatigue, and I love to train those two things together. So let's say someone's in the gym, they're lifting some weights, and they notice that the muscles are starting to fatigue. The mental chatter is beginning. Oh, you've done enough. You can put the weights down. You don't need to do another rep, but you know that you want to do another rep because hypothetically you're there to train to get better. What do we do about that mental chatter? Like, what's going on at that intersection between physical exertion and the brain, perhaps your mind, the emergent property of the brain, I think, is trying to keep you safe and not put yourself into a dangerous situation? So
the first thing I would say is that the voices in your mind, not to sound like crazy people, but the internal monologue, it matters. And one of the ways it matters is going back to this idea of your subjective perception of effort. So when I said your perception of how hard something is, it depends on the core temperature, and it depends on mental fatigue. It also depends on what you're telling yourself. if you're telling yourself, I don't think I can do this, like if you're halfway through a marathon and saying, yeah, there's no way I can maintain this pace, then your brain is listening to that voice, and it's factoring it in to say, okay, yeah, this is more like a 7 out of 10 effort than a 6 out of 10 effort. So if you're asking yourself, can I maintain this pace? You're more likely to say no if you're telling yourself that. And so this is like 1970s sports psychology, but put in the framework of how we now understand what the master switch of the brain is, or of effort is, which is subjective effort. So if you're able to change your internal monologue, so rather than saying, this is so hard, I hate this, I don't even know why I signed up for this stupid race, or why I came to the gym today. If you change it to like, it's hard, but I know this is what I've trained for. Like, I chose to be here.
Right.
This is what I want. I will be so proud of myself if I finish this set. It's going to be worthwhile. That's literally going to change your perception of effort, how you would rate this, how hard am I working on a scale of 10. It's going to alter that, and it's going to allow you to perform better. Now, it's not, in the heat of the moment, it's very hard to just say, I'm going to be happy now. Right. I'm so happy I ran this marathon.
Go, Alex, go.
So it's something that you have to work on over time. You have to, and I think stage 0 is become aware of what's going on in your head.
Okay.
So if you're in the gym, start listening, like, what are you telling yourself 3/4 of the way through the set? Or if you're running, like, what are the thoughts going through your head? And people have done lots of studies, in different activities. What are the thoughts? And it's amazing how negative the dominant self-talk is. I mean, maybe it's not amazing, because exercising hard is challenging. So it's not surprising that we tend to say things like, this sucks. Why am I doing this? Or what are we going to have for dinner? People have all these different kinds of thoughts. They're generally not helpful. So then you start to identify the ones that are least helpful and say, what can I replace it with? And again, not, to your point, it's not just like, Alex, you're the best, you're going to break the world record today. Because it's not true, and you're not stupid. You're not going to believe that if you're trying to tell yourself that. So you're trying to think of things that fit with your personality, that for me, it's not going to help if I just tell myself, I'm good enough, I'm strong enough, I'm the best. I need to think of something that feels real, which is like, I've trained for this. This is what it's supposed to feel like. Everybody around me is feeling the same thing. So that's no reason to slow down.
So we could almost build up, you could anticipate what's going to happen. You're going to feel tired. You're going to feel some fatigue. Be aware of the internal monologue around, which is probably designed to protect you, maybe, I think. Mm-hmm. And then have some ideas or words or sentences, power words, to help you through those moments that are real, that are actually true. So you could say, like, I do want to do these workouts. I've planned to do these workouts. I know that this is going to make me feel better. I will have more energy. Is that?
Yeah. So when people talk about mantras, I mean, it's not that necessarily that the mantra has magic powers, but it's like, it's better to be saying your mantra than it is to be saying, you should quit now, you miserable piece of slime. Yeah, exactly. So the mantra, it can be a displacer, but to your point about anticipating how you're going to feel, I think that's really important. And so as a runner, there's this sort of feeling like, you get fitter throughout any given season, and maybe it's because you race faster. Maybe it's because you're getting fitter, but it's also because the first race of any season, you forget how terrible it feels. And you get through, and you're like, I'm going to die. This is the worst thing. Yeah. And then 2 weeks later, you're like, yeah, this is what it felt like last time. I know it's going to be okay. And so to be able to take that imaginative step of, I know how this is going to feel. And this is not specific to sports. This is like, I have a big presentation. I know how I'm going to feel before that presentation. I'm going to feel nervous. I'm going to feel insecure. I'm going to feel unprepared. And so what am I going to tell myself when the voice says, you're unworthy to be giving this presentation, or you're not ready? Like, you have your ammunition ready to answer that. And so the same thing goes for exercise. Like, how am I going to feel 8 reps into a 10 rep set? Yeah. Be ready to tell yourself that that's okay. This is what you're supposed to feel, and doesn't mean you can automatically do the last 2 reps, but you might as well give it a try.
I love the fact we're beginning to, like, we're just teetering on the edge of the limit of what's possible for humans. That is a really challenging state for us to be in. You've written about craving, the craving of challenge. Like, we want that challenge. We need that challenge. What's that all about?
Yeah, so this is a midlife crisis question in some ways. It's like, what do I need to keep suffering?
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, exactly.
It's actually a Greg Wells therapy session.
Yeah. This is. It's funny how I started thinking about these questions in my 40s. It's like, couldn't I just lie on the couch for the rest of my life?
Why do I actually feel like I need to go beat the crap out of myself?
Yeah. So there's some work by a psychologist at the University of Toronto named Michael Inslicht, and many colleagues, but he's kind of led this work on something called the effort paradox, which is the idea that there are things we value not in spite of the fact that they're hard, but because they're hard. So it's like, if you're a mountaineer, you climb to the top of a mountain, there's a beautiful view, right? So you could say, I'm willing to put up with this suffering because I can get to the top and I'm going to see this beautiful view. So then you put a gondola that takes them to the top, and they'll be like, no, I don't want to just take the gondola to the top and see the view. I wanted to climb there. I wanted to get the whole premise of mountaineering is looking for the hardest route you can handle to get up there. And that's what they value. They value what's hard about it, not just getting to the end. And I think that's a sort of, that you think, well, those mountaineers are crazy. Then you start to examine your life and you realize, no, if you ask people what are the meaningful things in their lives, they can't tell you what the meaning of life is, but they can see the things that felt meaningful to me are. And then they're going to list a bunch of things, most of which require effort.
Interesting.
Like whether it's bringing up kids or, completing a marathon. Surprisingly, ordering furniture from IKEA. There's research on the IKEA effect. It's like,
really?
Yeah. They find that you get people to assemble a coffee table, and then, or you give it to them, the exact same coffee table, and then you ask them to sell it on a secondhand market. They'll ask for a higher price if they've put it together themselves. They value it more because they've had to struggle with it. The struggle is real with IKEA, right?
Yeah, it is.
But this is the general thing. And so, not to wander too far down the rabbit hole here, but why is it that we value these things? This is a hard question, and there's a lot of you can find this effect in animals too. You train them on two different kinds of food, one of which they have to fly a long way to and one a short way to. And then if you give them equal choice, they're the same distance away, they seem to like the one they used to have to fly farther to get. They're like, this is the one that was more rewarding to me.
Yeah.
But so it's obviously there's a lot of things going on, but the explanation that I find most compelling is that people find hard things meaningful. And there's Michael Inslicht, this psychologist I mentioned, he's done work showing that the extent to which you're able to find meaning in taking on challenging things is correlated with things like how happy you are and how successful you are at work, how much you make, and how much meaning you believe you have in your life. So it's like, so I'm gonna find my life meaningful, be happier, and make more money. It's like, yeah, okay, I'll keep doing hard things.
Is there a sweet spot in the effort continuum between doing, literally sitting on the couch and doing nothing, but it's too hard. You actually can't do it, and it's destructive.
Yeah, for sure. Because we can all imagine situations that are like, okay, this isn't challenging. This is just suicide, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a guy back in the 1800s, a psychologist named Wilhelm Wundt, who was a German psychologist. He was one of the fathers of modern psychology. And he proposed this sort of general relationship between how much we enjoy something and how kind of intense or complex or difficult the stimulus is. And it's basically looks like kind of like a bell curve. If something's really easy or obvious or predictable, boring. If something is totally incomprehensible, totally impossible, we find that unpleasant.
Right.
But in the middle, there's a sweet spot where basically we have a challenge that engages us, that keeps our full attention, that enables us to learn about the world. And there's sort of new brain science that suggests that our brains are wired to minimize uncertainty. And by doing that, you have to learn about the world. And so this sort of sweet spot, you can do studies with 8-month-old babies where you show them sequences of shapes. And if it's like the same shape over and over again, boring, they look away. You can track their attention by tracking their gaze. If it's random sequence of shapes, they look away, it's boring. But if there's a pattern, if there's some sort of pattern to discern, that'll keep their attention. So even at 8 months, we're wired to seek that sort of intermediate level of like, this is challenging, there's something here, it's not totally incomprehensible, but it's not totally predictable. So, and I think that generalizes to the challenges we ideally choose in work and life.
I love that. I also love exploring. I love adventure. That for me is when we talk about the sweet spot, challenge, exploration, pushing the limits. I love doing that by getting out there and doing a little bit of rock climbing or going for a really good hike or paddling on a river, something that pushes the limits, but you can obviously do it in a reasonably safe manner, especially if you have a good guide. Adventure is amazing. I love it. You've written about it. How important is finding adventure and exploring in our lives?
Yeah, I think it ties really tightly into this idea of finding challenge and learning about the world. And I think it's worth distinguishing between the desire to seek out the unknown and risk. So we often think of those things together. It's like, oh, he went on an adventure. He went down class 5 waterfalls or like backpacked to the North Pole solo or whatever. And it's like, that was adventuresome, but it was also risky. Yeah. And so I really value adventure, but I also really value being alive. And so I you know, it's one of the best. Yeah. And so, for instance, I do a lot of whitewater canoeing. I go with friends every summer. And this helps me think about it because we'll come to rapids, and on the group, with the group of friends that I go canoeing with, I'm probably the most experienced canoeist and the most experienced whitewater canoeist. I'm also the least likely to say, yeah, let's run this rapid. I'll be like, I'm good. I think I'm going to portage. Yeah. Because I love being out there. I love the unknown. I love challenges. I do love going through rapids that are at the right level for me. But I have zero desire to either drown or to be, to break our canoe in the middle of the wilderness and have. So I am quite risk averse, but I'm open to experience, and I seek out experiences and new things and learning about the world. So I think that's an important distinction.
I like that a lot. That's helpful.
Yeah, and it relates to, so this idea of adventure to me is then tied to the idea not of fearing for my life, but of experiencing new things.
Are we wired to seek out adventure? Or are we wired to explore?
I think we are.
Yeah.
There's a couple different ways of answering that. So one is that there's a gene that's related to dopamine receptors in the brain that exists in different versions. And there's one version that is more responsive to, that is more excited by the feeling of novelty. So people with that version of the gene, when they go skiing, they're more likely to ski out of bounds or whatever. Right. And they're more likely to develop problem gambling habits and stuff like that. They're more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD. They really want to know what's around the next corner. Yeah. And you can see, if you look at human migration patterns starting about 50,000 years ago when this gene version emerged, that's when humans started spreading across the globe and went all the way down to South America. So there's a link between how we spread the globe and the presence of people who are like, yeah, I got to know what's over the mountain. And so that wiring, some people have more of it than others, this explorers gene, but we all have this sort of dopamine circuitry in the brain. And dopamine, not in the sense of dopamine as a pleasure chemical, but dopamine is a marker of prediction error. So when something is, not when something is good, but when something is better than you expect, you get this hit of dopamine. One way of explaining that is like, let's say you take a drug, which I'm not recommending, but let's say you try a drug for the first time and it gives this amazing feeling. You get a hit of dopamine because it was better than you expected. And that's your brain's bookmark of saying, that was pretty awesome, do that again. You take that same drug for the 10th time, there's no surprise anymore. You know exactly how it's gonna feel. So you get exactly the same feeling, but your brain is like, yeah, that's exactly what we expected. So you don't get a dopamine hit. Right. And that leaves you thinking, oh, I need to get a bigger dose or try a different drug. That's a negative example of what this search for prediction error can do. But more fundamentally, if what we're searching for is things that are better or different than we expect, because and the reason for that is we want to learn about the world. We're wired to learn about the world. But that leads us to explore. That leads us to want to try new things, because that's where you'll find prediction error, when you don't already know what's going to happen. Yeah. So I think this goes back to sort of go big picture. All living things benefit from learning about the world around them to help them survive. And so we're wired to want to learn about the world, and that drives us to explore. We also want to survive. There's also like opposite tendencies to be safe, and so it's not like we're always just crazy like, hey, whenever there's a new thing, I'll try the new thing. But one of the drives that powers us or that motivates us is the desire to learn about the world by trying new things.
That's so fascinating, and I'd like to come at it from the reverse angle now, just like we started with feed forward and feed back. We have this gene that inspires us or enables us to explore the world, if you will. Is the reverse also true? Does exploration, does adventure change us? Does it go back the other way?
That's a great question. My first answer is, yeah, it's great. It's amazing. It teaches us that that's how we discover the world. That we wouldn't be going to Mars if we hadn't been wired to explore. But there's a flip side. and so when I was writing about exploring, it's like I look at I was reading all these stories about great explorers. It's like, wow, he discovered this continent. He went there. He was the first to do there. What happened next? Oh, he went there, and then he died. It's like, it's like the people who are most, like, some of the people who discover the most exciting things, they're just totally driven to explore new things, and they were never happy, right? Like they were never satisfied. There was never the sense that, hey, I wanted to do this and I did it, and this feels so good. It's like, hey, I wanted to do this. Now what can I do next? Well, that was good. So let me do something even crazier.
Yeah.
Okay, I did that. So now let's do it on one ski, backwards. And it's like, oh, now I'm dead. So, Christopher Columbus, he just kept going on new missions, and it totally destroyed his reputation and his health and died. That's a typical story of explorers. So I think balance, it's a cliche, but balance is key. That the drive to explore is great and leads us to do new things. But if that's all we follow, if we only follow the desire to find new things, then it's very hard to enjoy, the place. You climb the mountain, you need to enjoy the view a little bit and understand that what was satisfying about it was climbing it, and not just saying, well, I climbed this mountain, what's the next higher mountain that I can climb?
I think that's so important right now. It's like process, not outcome, enjoying the journey, doing the right thing for the right reasons. All those sorts of things matter probably now more than ever.
And it's, obviously I've heard lots of people say that. It's very hard to internalize, right? Like in a professional context, for example. Or actually, in running with my competitive sport, and it's actually no better lab to learn that, because you're like, man, I wish I could run under 4 minutes for 1,500. Imagine what a great person I would be if I could do that. Imagine how happy I would be. And you do that, and you're like, wow, I did it. I wonder if I can run 3:55. And I was lucky enough in running that I achieved some goals that I had dreamed of for a long time. And after a while, you realize, the half-life of feeling like you're the cat's meow is very short. And so you have to, if you're going to re-up and chase the next goal, you better be doing it because you're going to enjoy the process of chasing that goal, not just because it will. If it will only have been worthwhile if you succeed, then man, you better think twice about doing that, because first of all, you may not succeed, then you'll be like, well, it's a waste of time. And second of all, you may succeed, and then you'll be like, hey, this didn't change my life in the way I thought it would.
Yeah, no matter where you go, there you are, right?
So. Yeah, whatever enlightenment is at the top of the mountain is there, or whatever Zen is at the top of the mountain is the Zen you brought with you.
That's funny. Let's get really tactical and just get a few takeaways for people from what you've learned, exploring the curious limits of the human body, adventure, all the things that we've been speaking about. If there was a couple things that are important for people to think about or to action in their lives to get healthier, to improve their well-being, to elevate their performance, what do you think might be a couple takeaways or critical things for people to think about?
So first of all, like, no question is move your body on a regular basis. Like there is nothing. I mean, okay, maybe this is an overstatement. Like being able to breathe is important, but like exercise is the most powerful and versatile and broad action you can take for your physical health, your mental health. I think over the last few years, there's been a big sort of recognition that, it's not just how I feel today or if a year from now, but like when you're in your 70s, in your 80s, it's like, what is your quality of life going to be? 'Cause, not just are you alive, but can you get out of a chair?
Right.
So I've always been an endurance athlete. I put a squat rack in my basement last year because I'm like, I need to get some muscles. There's no point in having a big heart if I can't get out of bed. So anyway, exercise, again, this is not radical advice, but really.
It's a great reminder because it's hard to get up and go for that walk or that jog or that run. Not hard, but like it takes effort, it takes energy.
We are wired to try and conserve energy, right? Like, so there's as much as we're wired to discover the unknown, we're also wired to not waste energy. So like the couch will always feel attractive to us. And so if there's nothing else that people do, it's like understand the stakes in terms of your present and future mental and physical health.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be, I guess the appendix or the corollary to that is, it doesn't really matter what you do, especially if you're coming from a place where you're not exercising regularly. It doesn't have to be zone 2, it doesn't have to be zone 4, it doesn't have to be zone 8, it doesn't have to be strength training, it doesn't have to be just find something that you
Literally
enjoy.
anything
Like,
works.
yeah. If you, whether it can be walking, eventually if that gets easy, it should be brisk walking. And if that gets easy, maybe you want to try biking or running or something.
Yeah.
Like, find something that challenges you a little bit, but more importantly, that you will still want to do tomorrow or 2 days from now or whatever the case may be. That is not like so you're not fighting yourself every day. And you know, it's not always easy to find something that doesn't feel like a chore sometimes, but ideally you can find something that you take some pleasure in. So whether that's playing pickup basketball or taking up tennis or whatever. So that's number one. Number two, I would say, is going back to something we talked about earlier, is understanding the importance of your mental state and your internal like monologue, what you're telling yourself, that if you're constantly telling yourself that this is pointless, that it's not good enough, that you're not good enough, that's just going to make it hard to do everything, including exercise.
Right.
So I think those would be my sort of two chief rules.
Isn't it curious? We talked about like pushing the limits, and exploring the world, and all of these, you know, mental and physical challenges. Yet we land at, you know, what is it that we need to do? The basics.
Yeah, and maybe it's worth acknowledging that if you haven't exercised for 10 years, trying jogging or something like that is pushing your limits.
100%, totally.
So it's not like there's a contradiction there or anything like that. But yeah, it doesn't have, as much as I love exploring and reading the tales of like Ernest Shackleton or whatever like that. I mean, this is another, not to jump to a different topic, but it's like, I think I thought a lot about exploring because I was writing about it. And it's like, is exploring really only something that happens if you're the first to do something? Is it only like if you discover something new, you're exploring it? And because that's a demoralizing way of looking at it, because there aren't that many things to discover. You know, the world's pretty thoroughly mapped. But it's like, no, discovery is about prediction error. It's about discovering things that are new to you. And so that can happen. Some of my favorite adventures have been with my kids along the Humber River near where I live.
Yeah.
Just wandering off. There's a big sort of forest there off the trails. And going in the winter, going on snowshoes, you can really get in among the trees and climb the ravine. And it's like, this feels like adventure to me.
Yeah.
And it's not traveling to Papua New Guinea, which I've done and is fantastic and is an adventure, but it's like, yeah, it's going out and just seeing the world through new eyes. Having kids is maybe that's another example. It's like seeing their like, wow, look at this, I've never seen this before. Then you remember, it's like, oh, this is pretty cool. I've stopped looking at it.
Yeah.
But
I love that, and just a great reminder to like adventure is accessible in our day-to-day lives, and it's all right there.
Nothing would be more depressing than to think that adventure is something that happens once a year in the summer for a week and a half, right? Like that would just make me want to, cry to think that you can't have fun and adventure and exploration. There's intellectual exploration. There's reading new books, listening to new music.
Yeah.
But even there's discovery to be had in taking a different way to work.
Love that. Alex, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with us today, to take us out to the limits of what humans are capable of, to share the adventurous gene with us, but of course to bring it back and make it easy and accessible and understandable, all the things that you do so well. So thank you for taking the time to hang out with us today. It's been awesome.
Thanks, Rick. It's so much fun to bounce off
I know,
ideas.
we could have kept going for hours, but there's
Absolutely.
a time limit.
Yeah.
People have to get
People have to go out and adventure. That's what they need to do.
Get out there and adventure. Thanks, Alex.
Okay, thanks, Rick.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for that session with Alex Hutchinson. Oh my gosh, what an incredible conversation. He is just so good at pulling out really simple learnings from very complicated data sets. And I love the fact that we explored the limits of what humans are capable of, but had clear takeaways about how we can push our own limits and expand our limits so that we can live the best possible life. During that conversation, if you thought of anyone that you think might benefit from that or could learn a little bit more, who needs to hear that information, please share this with them. That would mean the world to us. That literally is the most important thing that you can do to support the show and, of course, make the world a better place. And I'd love for you just to give yourself a little round of applause, a little pat on the back, because let's face it, you just spent almost an hour thinking about yourself and developing yourself and building your own capacities, which without question is going to make the world a better place, which is what this is all about. So thank you and congrats for still being here. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for being a part of this journey, and we'll see you in the next session. All right, everyone, hope you enjoyed that session. This is a little note from the lawyers. This podcast and video contains advice and information relating to health and wellness and is presented solely for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes. We've made enormous efforts to make sure that the information is accurate and that what we've contained in this episode is based on science and research. However, it should still only be used as a supplement rather than to replace the advice of your doctor or other qualified healthcare professional. If you know or suspect that you have a health problem, it's recommended that you seek your qualified healthcare professional's advice before embarking on any program, treatment, or protocol. All right, thanks for listening in. Really appreciate you. We'll see you in the next video, session, or podcast.